Okay, wait, give everybody a chance to get here. Just sent out an invite. Okay. I did get a message from a few people, not from one person earlier, saying they weren't going to be able to attend class today. Mariana. Okay. Let's just drop Alma and Maria. And today we're going to finish with another assignment on a program called Go Formative. It's pretty straightforward. So after we go through everything, I'll send that out. It's self-correcting, um, and I'll give you a few more heads up as we approach that. All right. Go. So we'll go ahead and get started. I'll send us some more messages as we continue. Looks like we have some more people jump on. Okay. So um, this is one of the few places I'm going to break away from the book when it comes to writing because I don't agree with how they set up the writing portion of it. And what I mean by that is they really get down to finding like common mistakes in writing. You're going to get some questions like that on the high set, obviously. And they get down to simple things like capitalization, but they do whole lessons. And they're not really giving you the tools to be able to use this practically on a test. Okay. One of the tools that you guys have available to you is Aztec. And I've been getting reports on Aztec and they're coming back blank. So it's important, again, it's important that we use it. If there's an influx of students, just like Mike said that there would be because of the economy and people now having more time, etc. Yes, we'll all be new students, but this program is all about people passing, doing well on the tape and on the causes. So you're going to have a better chance of getting the things that you want if you've shown that you're participating. That's coming to class. That's also using Aztec. So please, please, please log on to Aztec. Okay, because it's still coming back blank, and I'm starting class later. So I'm actually taking away instructional time to try to give you guys additional time to work on it. So if we're not using that time, then it's a double-edged sword because now we're not getting that live instruction and we're not doing Aztec. So we're basically doing nothing. So I'm going to keep harping on that. Okay. Make sure that you're in there, you're getting your time. That's why I start the day a little bit later. Things are opening up. And again, my goal is to have everybody test. Everybody test, everybody test. So, first thing that we're going to start off with is going to be capitalization. Okay. And this is not going to be something that's going to be, this will probably give you the most amount of buck for your, or the most amount of bang for your buck when it comes to some of your multiple choice questions, like what's wrong with this sentence. This is going to become helpful. Also for your essay. So in the book, they try to tell you about pronouns, proper nouns, and common nouns, and which ones you capitalize, which ones you don't. I'm going to give you a very simple method. You can write this on your paper as soon as you start testing. It's called MINTS. And I know Ildi has heard this before. Okay. It's called MINTS. This is an easy way to know what you need to capitalize. All right. So the M stands for months, days, and holidays. Okay. Months, days, and holidays. Okay. So if you're wondering if there's something that is grammatically incorrect, if you're writing a sentence, you're not sure what to capitalize, look at this, right? Now the holidays have to be real holidays. And what I mean by that is there's a lot of like other dates that people celebrate but are not necessarily recognized as anything. So and I know you know what days those are, right? So I don't see them giving you some random holiday like Flag Day or Arbor Day. They're probably going to stick with Christmas, Halloween, Thanksgiving, etc. All right. The days of the week, keep that in mind. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Those are the actual names of the day. Any questions on that? Okay. Alma, any questions? Okay. Moving on. So, I, pretty straightforward. The pronoun I. I must always be capitalized. Okay. So, anytime you're talking about yourself, it should always be capitalized. Okay. Besides the GED, most of your essays are going to be scored by a person. So, when you're missing little things like this, that's when they start to be less forgiving and they can be more critical because writing, for the most part, is subjective. All right. So, let's not make a bad impression by missing these. The N. This can be the N and the T are where things can get a little tricky. This is why we use mints. The N stands for names of people or animals. All right. Names of people or animals. Okay. Um, I haven't seen them really try to trick you with that, but if the name of the dog is David, the D has to be capitalized, plain and simple. Okay. If it's the name of a person, it must always be capitalized. I'm sure in books you probably see where somebody's name is not capitalized or things like that. It's almost like music. They're trying to be creative and be artsy. But on the writing, on the essay, and on these writing questions, we have to follow the rules. We can't break them to prove a point or for some artistic thing. Okay. Now, names and titles is where people get the most confused. The T stands for titles. The official title of anything. The actual title of anything. So, if we're talking about markers, we were not going to capitalize marker. That's a common noun. Now, if we're talking about expo markers, then yes, we need to capitalize the E in expo because that's the official title of the marker. So, anytime, name of anything basically, no, buildings, places, etc. I would separate names mostly to deal with living things. When you think about buildings, when you think about places, go with titles. It'll be an easy distinction to make. So, buildings have official titles, right? So, and the reason I say that is because the big fight between names and titles is common nouns versus proper nouns. And this can be a little weird in practice because sometimes, like for example, I know when I was younger, Xerox was a company that made copies, and people would say something like, "Oh, we need 50 um, of these worksheets copied," or something like that, right? And people would say, "Oh, okay, I'm going to Xerox it," and Xerox became like the idea of copying. Xerox is a company. It's the same thing with the GED. A lot of people assume the GED is the actual title of your high school equivalency, and it's not. It's the name of a company. High school equivalency would not be capitalized because it's just we're just commonly talking about um, we're just commonly talking about any high school, right? So that's where the names and titles can be a little tricky. I have seen in the book where they throw people off by calling something a pet store, and the actual name of the pet store is Pet Store. I don't see them playing games like that with you. But the names and titles where it's going to get confusing is going to come down mostly to those inanimate objects that you think are called something when it's actually just a company, or it's referring to more than just that title, right? A GED is just one high school equivalency, right? We have TASC and we have the high set, right? So that's where you want to ask yourself. It's just the name of a person and title. Is this the actual title of a building, or are we just saying the building is a skyscraper? Because that doesn't tell us it's the actual title, right? Is it a building in New York, right? Or the New York Empire State Building? Those kinds of things. Last but not least, we have S, which is the start of a sentence. So this is a quick tool that you will have available in case of those questions where you're looking at correcting what's wrong with the sentence or when you're writing your essay. This is a quick hit. Questions. No questions, no questions, no questions. Okay, so Sam said no questions. No. And then Alma, any questions? Okay. So let's move on. Okay. So the next thing that we're going to talk about is how we have, we're going to look at what a sentence is, what a simple sentence is, and what a complex sentence is. Again, this is going to help you with those punctuation, grammar errors, but this is going to be especially important in your writing. Okay. So when we're looking at what a sentence is, right? And in the world of academia, a sentence is known as an independent clause. So, an independent clause meaning that it can stand on its own, right? So, what does a sentence need to stand on its own? It needs a subject and a verb. All right, so we'll be doing an assignment on this, so please make sure you're not treating this as a podcast and not writing anything down or asking questions. All right, this is gonna be the vast majority of the writing section. I'm taking like what they dedicated 7 sections to. I'm doing it in like 3. So a subject and a verb. Right, that's known as an independent clause. You will probably see that on the instructions. Independent because it can stand on its own. There's a clear subject and a clear verb, right? Subject like a noun, and then verb as like an action phrase, right? Now, we would have what is known as a dependent clause. And you might know this as a fragment, run on sentence, a sentence splice. Okay. And I'm going to give you a very simple definition. If an independent clause is a subject and a verb, that's a complete sentence. A dependent clause is simply having a subject or a verb. But not both. Okay. So an independent clause, otherwise known as a complete sentence, has a subject and a verb. A dependent clause has one or the other, and that's why it doesn't make any sense. So a run-on sentence, maybe you keep talking about a subject, but there's no verb, right? So it's like David walked, Jonathan joined him, they went, and no one understands exactly where you're going. You're kind of all over the place. No clear subject, no clear verb, right? That's what's known as a dependent clause. So every complete sentence is an independent clause. Anything that is not a complete sentence is a dependent clause. Questions? Got it. Now, obviously, when we're writing our essay, we cannot have just simple sentences, one subject, one verb. I went to the store. I bought eggs and milk. The idea is that you can combine all of that into what is known as a complex sentence, a sentence that contains multiple subjects, multiple verbs, right? So let's look at that. And again, not to say you cannot have simple sentences, but you want to try to avoid that because that is part of a rubric for grading an essay is if you have complex sentences. So you want to put enough complex sentences in there where you're showing that you're a scholarly writer. So if I said, I went to the store, this is an independent clause, right? We have the subject, the pronoun I, we have the verb, went to the store, right? With that predicate phrase, okay? Actually, I'm not going to go into diagramming these sentences just yet. We'll work on that when we come back around to reading. I went to the store. I bought eggs and milk. Okay. So here is where we want to demonstrate that we can actually create a complex sentence, right? We have two sentences here. Sometimes that's going to be necessary, but I would encourage you to really minimize these, right? So we can combine this in a couple of different ways, right? So I could use a comma, right? And that's would be using an introductory comma. I could use commas in a series. I could use a semicolon. There's a couple of different ways I can combine this, right? Nothing, nobody can. There's no reason why I can't just put a semicolon here, right? That's combining two complete sentences. So let's break down some of the tools that we have where we can combine this. Okay. So I'm going to give you some of the most common ways of using a comma, and I'm going to give you a quick way to use a semicolon. There's at least 20 different ways that we can use a comma. That's not going to be helpful for the test because these are going to be the ones you're going to get the most amount of questions on, and it's going to help you the most with your writing. So the first one is going to be known as an introductory comma. Okay. So an introductory comma is where you're combining an independent clause and a dependent clause, right? All right. You're combining an independent clause and a dependent clause. Okay. So, for example, when you come to my house, comma, take off your shoes. Okay. When you come to my house, take off your shoes. Now, the reason we have this comma here is that this initial part, when you come to my house, this is not a complete sentence. This is a dependent clause. Right? It's depending on the second part, which is a complete sentence. Take off your shoes, right? Has a subject and it has a verb, right? So this here is what is known as an independent clause. Right? So, how could I use this to fix my earlier sentence? I could say, at the store, comma, I bought eggs and milk. And how do you know it's an introductory comma? Because the dependent part can even be flipped around and the sentence will still make sense. Why? Because the dependent part needs the independent clause. So it doesn't matter which order, right? I could flip this around. I could say, take off your shoes when you come to my house. I could say, I bought eggs and milk at the store, right? So that's the power of the comma, right? This is I guarantee you're going to get a lot of questions about fixing sentences that are going to include this. You're also going to be able to use this whenever you are creating a sentence, whenever you are writing a sentence for your essay. Easiest way to figure out if you're doing it correctly, can it be flipped? Questions? Okay. So on the test, they may ask you to rewrite a sentence. Make sure you spell it exactly the same way it's spelled on the test, and make sure that you use a comma in the right location. So if you're inserting the comma, there's a part where I have to correct it by hand. Just make it obvious. Yes, you can think of it that way. Yes. You can think of it as some kind of dependent clause, something that is not a sentence by itself. It just has a subject or it's just a verb, right? Then you're adding in a complete sentence. You're showing you're the master of writing because now you've taken what is like a fragment or some kind of a sentence splice and you've now combined it with a complete sentence to have a complete independent clause, right? So that's how you show that you are comfortable in your writing. Quick way to fix your own writing, quick way to find somebody else making a mistake in their writing. Because when you come to my house, that's not an independent clause, right? Like, what is the actual predicate phrase? Like, what action are we doing when you come to the house? Doesn't make any sense, right? So that's why we need to have that independent clause. Take off your shoes. That is a complete sentence. Make sense? Okay. So this is going to be called an introductory comma. Now, some of what we're going to go over is not going to have an official name. So we're just going to give it a name. Unlike math, where everything has like a theorem or a formula and it's very structured, a lot of things in reading are not going to be like that. So very few of these are going to have actual names. This is one of the few that does. Okay. That's going to be a quick way to fix things. Now, the next one I'm going to show you, which is called commas in a series, or if you want to be really scholarly and impress your friends on the streets, you can call it an Oxford comma. Okay. So it's commas in a series or an Oxford comma. This I can guarantee you're going to use. Okay. This will definitely come up as a punctuation grammar question, but you're going to want to utilize this when you're writing your own essay. Okay. So, commas in the series, an Oxford comma is used for a list of two or more. I'm sorry, three or more things. There are a couple of simple rules here. You need a conjunction. A conjunction brings sentences together. When you're using an Oxford comma, you have to signal that you're finishing the list with a conjunction. Okay? So, before we get to the actual example, a conjunction brings sentences together. Easy way to remember them, fanboys. They're subordinate conjunctions, but we don't need to worry about that right now. So F stands for for. That's a conjunction. A, and, ed, nor, be, but, o, or, why, yet. S, so. I'm sure you know what all of these already mean. Nor you may have not seen before. Nor is just when you're giving an option between multiple things and you don't want anything, right? So I don't want the Patriots to win the Super Bowl nor the Cowboys, right? So it's just negating two things. But is when you're going to contradict yourself, right? And yet is a fancier way of saying but, right? Like if you were to say, exercise will get you in shape, but you need to eat healthy. Yet those that don't eat healthy won't get in shape. So you're going to go against yourself. So and for are also pretty much the same thing. So is a fancier way of saying for, right? Questions before we start talking about examples? Questions, questions, questions. This is how I know you're paying attention or if you're treating it like a podcast. Questions, questions, questions. No from Ildi. Haven't heard from Sam. Haven't heard from Andre. Haven't heard from Alma. Questions, questions, questions. Okay. So let's look at that same example we had earlier. So I bought eggs, comma, bacon. Notice how they're all lowercase because we're just talking about all kinds of eggs. I never said I bought Canadian bacon or free range eggs or whatever, right? They're just common nouns. I bought eggs, bacon, and hash browns at the store. So whenever you want to use these, I'm going to signal I'm done with my list by using a conjunction. And right before my conjunction needs to come a comma. So right before my conjunction, right, I'm going to need that comma. Notice that I have a list of three things, right? This conjunction right here signals that I'm done, that I'm finishing my list, right? And remember, the conjunctions are for, and, nor, but, or, yet, and so. Fanboys. Because you guys have been writing for a while, you'll know what makes the most sense to finish your list, right? If we went to a mechanic, right? He might say something like, for your car to work. All right, no, sorry. Actually, all right. Might say you must buy brakes, engine oil, brakes, engine oil, tires, right, comma, for your car to work. Right? So you might say you must buy brakes, engine oil, tires for your car to work. So I'm using that for, right? I could say you must buy brakes, engine oil, tires so your car will work, right? So, but this conjunction is what signals the end. Are you going to use all of them? Probably not. Will you catch people, in this case, the sentence you must correct? Will you catch them using it incorrectly? Probably. All right. What are the most common ones you're going to use? And, right? The most common one you're going to use is and probably but or yet. But and is going to be the most common because you're going to use this when you have a list of things. Questions? Questions? Okay, so I see Andre's with us. Ildi, Alma, Sam. No. Okay. The next one we're going to look at is going to be separating the important from the unimportant. This is not the official name of it. It's just what it does. It really has no official name. Yeah. This one is a great way to fix a run-on sentence, right? So, David who turned 12 yesterday got a bike for Christmas. Okay. I don't need to know that he turned 12. So I can put a comma here and a comma here. If I eliminate everything in between, I still have a complete sentence. David got a bike for Christmas. That's really the most important thing. How do you know when you're using a comma to separate the important from the unimportant? When everything in between those commas can be eliminated and you still have a complete sentence. Now, this, I wouldn't really encourage you to use this right out when you're writing. What I think this is going to be powerful for is when you're reviewing your writing. I'm sure everybody understands the process of writing, where you're going to have like your brainstorming, then your rough draft, then your final draft, then your editing. And you're not obviously going to have all the time in the world to do that for the test. So when you're going through what you wrote, instead of rewriting the whole sentence, throw in these commas. That's where this is going to be the most powerful. Yes, you'll get it as the punctuation grammar questions, but this is really the most powerful for when you are editing your own writing. Right? Because if I got rid of this, if I got rid of the commas, it reads, David, who turned 12 yesterday, got a bike for Christmas. Right? So there's no stopping. It sounds like a run-on. Right? That's the power of the commas. Questions? Okay. This one, I'm pretty much going to tell you exactly what it is. This is a yes, no, direct name comma. You will use these. This is not going to be one for editing. All right. So if I were to say, Alma, go take out the trash. Right? I'm going to have that comma right after the name. Right? Alma, comma, go take out the trash. Pretty simple. Right? Same thing if I were to say, yes, comma, I am going to the party. Not going to spend too much time on that. Um, this is a quick hit, quick way to make sure that your sentences are not complex, are not just simple sentences. Um, quick hit for the punctuation. All right. I don't see you using this extremely often, but now you have some tools to break up the monotony of simple sentences. Questions? Okay. Now, you do have colons and semicolons and a bunch of other tools. Again, most of you are going to take the high set. The high set has to be corrected by a person. So we want to show that person, most likely a teacher, that you are a scholarly writer, right? So these are going to be quick hits that you'll understand for the test. The other one that we're going to talk about is the semicolon. Because when I looked at the colons and some other things that they were talking about in the book, sure, they're helpful, but I don't think they're going to apply everywhere the way that you want them to, or the way we would want them to. So we're going to talk about a semicolon. Okay. A semicolon, we're going to talk about the two basic jobs, right? So semicolon looks like this. And it does the job of a comma and a period, right? It's kind of like a California stop where you see a stop sign and the people don't really stop, they just kind of slow down. We call that a California stop. Um, this is the equivalent of that. Okay. So this is that California stop, like where you can take two sentences that are somewhat related and combine them without needing a period, right? Um, so if we look at that first example, let's say the first one here, right? This is going to be to combine two independent clauses. Now, we know that if we want to combine an independent clause and a dependent clause, we're going to use an introductory comma. Well, what if you want to take two sentences that are related and combine them together? Well, that's when we use a semicolon. I went to the store, semicolon. I bought milk. I don't have to use a period there to separate them. The sentences are related. They're both independent clauses. So I can use a semicolon. Now, a semicolon is also going to be helpful for list. This is when your Oxford comma is not going to work for your list. Right? And you're going to know when to use this. For example, if we talk about all the places that you have lived or you've traveled, right? So I can say, I have been to Cairo, Egypt, Madrid, Spain, and Houston, Texas. Right now, I have a list here, but because there's already a comma in the city or state or the state and the country, there's no point in me separating it again with commas. That's incredibly confusing. So we would use a semicolon. Guarantee you're going to get a question like that. Okay. And that's pretty much the only example of when something already has a comma in it and you're going to separate it with semicolons because what your list contains already has commas in it. Questions? Okay. Your other list is when when they're not just simply items. You have what's known as a list within a list. So I could say for the party, we need a DJ. Actually, I can leave lowercase. DJ for music. A chef to make food. And a clown for the kids. So you see how all of these are like are lists within a list of things that we need for the party? That's when I would use a semicolon, because a comma wouldn't really make sense here because we're talking about a list. We're not just talking about simple items, right? So when you have that list within a list, you can use the semicolon, right? And what I want you to pay particular attention to is the list within the list. Questions? Got it. And normally, actually, they would probably lead off with a semicolon there. Because this signals the end of a sentence, right? But, okay. Yeah. We'll just leave it at that. Okay. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to give you a code for Go Formative. It's another program. It's like ClassKick, but I like it a little bit more because it's self-correcting, so you don't have to wait on me to give you feedback. So it's just like, I think we might have used it one time before. It's just like ClassKick. You're going to type in your name, and then you get started. If you have any questions about the tools, because it is going to ask you to add a comma, let me know. But the tools are pretty straightforward. If something looks like it's a pen, it's a pen. You'll see things look like an eraser. Pretty self-explanatory. Because it is a computer program, again, if you misspell something even slightly, it will mark it wrong because it's just an algorithm. It just looks for like these steps. Oh, you're supposed to do this. It should look like that. So if you are like, wait a second, I put the comma in the right place. Why did I get it wrong? Make sure you spell everything exactly the same way it's spelled on the test. All right, so I'm going to put the directions in the live stream. So you're going to goformative.com/join. And then this is your code. Sorry about the two after join. There's no two in that. If you put the two in there, it's not gonna be able to reach it. Sorry, let me put a better link. Try that link. The first one had the two in there, the second one had the number two. Try that. No problem. I don't see you on here, Sam.